Hey y'all, Michelle Johnson here with Have Color Will Travel, and welcome back to my studio. Today I was going to do a watercolor experiment in the studio, and it just occurred to me, let's do it on film. Let's see what happens live, well, sort of live, at least on camera and in person. I am going to do a mad scientist experiment with my watercolor tubes to see if I can avoid going art supply shopping. Let me explain. I have this little sample from a wonderful internet art friend of mine by the name of Stephanie, who goes by the handle on Instagram of Demi-Godet. I've talked about her before. She gave me this little bitty dot of green gold. Now, I am not a tube green kind of person or kind of artist. I prefer to mix my greens. So that means I have many blues, many yellows, and even some blacks. I don't know if you know this, but black and yellow can make some really phenomenal greens. But this little dollop of green gold has kind of changed my mind about tube greens, or at least changed my mind about this particular one. And I don't mean because I haven't been able to make this color green on my own when I'm painting. This is Green Gold by Daniel Smith, and I don't have this color. I do have some tube greens. I'm not going to say that I don't. Tube greens are, especially single pigment tube greens, are very valuable in your painting kit, whether it's watercolor or acrylic. I have a phthalo green. As you can see, this is a fairly new tube. I've just recently brought home a Viridian Hue green by Holbein. I didn't get it for the Viridian part because it's not true Viridian. I got it because it's a PG7, which is a blue shade of green. So phthalo green blue shade, and this phthalo green is phthalo green yellow shade. I believe this is PG. I always get it if it's 36 or 37. And I don't want to say that wrong on camera. PG 36. So these two greens are very different. I have these. I also have an actual Viridian green because one of the nice things about having tube greens, especially these, and then let's see, do I have another one over here that's kind of, wait, I'll talk about this in a second. Mixing these types of greens, these single pigment color greens with quin colors like quin magenta and quin violet can make some really wonderful purples. So I like having these around. These don't make great natural greens for painting foliage or flowers and leaves and trees and those things, which I love to paint. I don't really like to use these colors for when I'm painting foliage. But the most common greens that people have in tubes, I'm not a super fan of. I don't really care for sap green a whole lot, and I don't really care for hooker's green. I've had them in my kit before, and they've come in sets, so I do have tubes of them, small ones. Like this one here, I have a small tube of sap green by Core. It's a fine color. I always end up modifying it with another color. It doesn't really excite me. But then recently I've been doing a lot of floral studies that I'm going to talk about in a later YouTube video. And for the sake of swiftness, this particular green gold has been really, really handy. And as you can tell, I've warped the paper so much using this little dot. And I'm like, I think I would love to have this in my kit because the use of tube greens isn't really to create the greenery you're looking for, but to speed up the process. So especially when you're painting outside, if you're doing direct painting, if you paint like I do in a very temperamental climate, we can either be way too hot or way too dry, and the air conditioning or the heater turns on and it saps all the water out of your watercolor experience, or you're painting outside. And I've literally had paint and water dry on my brush before I get to my paper. It's nice to have a tube green or a pre-mixed green ready to go, so it speeds up your watercolor mixing process. So you can start from here, add a little touch of something, and then boom, you've got your color. And what I have found is, as opposed to like sap green, and I don't even know if I have it. I don't think I have a tube with hooker's green. I find that this is more satisfying. Like I might even use this green, on its own. But I'm trying to buy less art supplies this year. I'm trying to use up. I guess I should say I'm not trying to shop less. I don't want to say that shopping for art supplies is bad or that an activity that I'm trying to prohibit in myself. That is absolutely untrue, and I don't think that's healthy for people who enjoy art. Let's not shame ourselves out of our art supply passion and interest and curiosity. But I'm trying to use up more of my art supplies this year before I have to buy them. Like, I would like to have to buy more, I don't know, ink, paper, paint, a new brush that I've worn out. I am trying to exhaust the supply that I have. That's the kind of the mindset that I'm going with here in 2025. That being said, I've been deeply loving this green gold and wishing I had it in a more stable way to carry around than this little piece of paper. So I went to my handy dandy Daniel Smith flyer that my friend Lisa gave me. Thank you, Lisa. And I'm like, what's in green gold? It wasn't written on here before. Stephanie just had the name of the paint and the pigment maker, or the paint maker. And so I looked here, and I think you can see this. Green gold pigments, it's a triple pigment color, PY150, PY3, PG36. And in case you're new to the concept of all these numbers and many things that you see when you look at paint labels, PY stands for pigment yellow. PG stands for pigment green. And I thought to myself, let's go back into my art supplies and before we buy a tube of Daniel Smith's green gold, which I totally love and would love to have, let's see if I can make some of my own. I have a lot of single pigment paint. So I went into my, let me set this aside, stash of watercolor paint. And I was looking for PY50, PY3, and PG36. Did I have them? Yes, I did. Woohoo! Yay. So I do have a Daniel Smith's PY50, which it turns out is nickel yellow azo, a very common color, one that's obviously very beautiful. So I have some nickel yellow azo. I also had where did I put that now? There we go. I also had a PG36, which is a phthalo green yellow shade. Again, and I'd recently bought this. A Daniel Smith, which made me happy that they were both Daniel Smith, because I'm like, well, if I'm going to try to create this color, like mix it like a recipe, like a baking recipe, it would be nice if they were all all the single pigments I mixed together were by the same paint maker. Now you're wondering, maybe you're wondering, maybe you're not like me, I wonder about things all the time. Why did I want the same paint maker's paint to mix it together? Isn't all watercolor paint the same? It's not. It can all be this very equal quality, especially when you're talking about artist brands. But not every brand of paint is going to use the same binder, the thing that pulls the pigment together to create this beautiful, colorful experience that we have that binds it to the paper. And not every paint maker cooks its recipe the same. I can show you this for an example. This is Green Gold by Daniel Smith. Guess what this is? Green Gold by Core. I don't know about you, but these are not the same. And they are not the same pigment. So the color that's in this Green Gold by Core is PY, Pigment Yellow 129. Core's Green Gold is a single pigment color. And Daniel Smith's Green Gold is made up of 3 different colors. This is a color recipe. This is a mix, and this is a single pigment color. So because of that, I was hoping when I went back into my colors that I would be able to find 3 Daniel Smiths to mix together to see if I could replicate Green Gold by Daniel Smith. Unfortunately, I came to kind of a stopping block when I was looking. I don't have Pigment Yellow 3, not in Daniel Smith. I only have Pigment Yellow 3, which turns out to be a Hansa Yellow Light or a Lemon Yellow, depending upon your paint maker. I have it in Core in a tube, and then I have it in Sennelier in a much beloved pan. Obviously, I can't use my pan to do this because, I mean, mixing two paint and pan paint would be a recipe for disaster, nightmare, frustration, all the things. Plus, I don't have very much of it left, so I'd like to keep it this way. So what I did, oh wait, before I just tell you what I did, I got excited when I thought, oh, I have Hansa Yellow Light Pink. Oh, it's Core. Why am I not excited to mix Core and Daniel Smith? I wonder if any of you know that are watching. The binder. This binder we have here in Daniel Smith is a gum arabic. It's a natural derived binder. The binder in Core is a synthetic binder called, I have to look at it to pronounce the name. Is it on the bottle? Aquazole. There we go. You probably can't see Aquazole. So this is a synthetic binder. I could give this a try. I could squeeze out some paint, mix it together, and see what happens. But Aquazole naturally likes to move away from other water products. That's what makes it so fun to paint with. And I'm not sure I want to use paint to see how well these binders mix together, whether we can mix up gum arabic and Aquazole in the same time. So I set this idea aside because these brands didn't use the same binder. And then I set this one aside because it was a pan. I took these two, because these are PY3, and I went through all of my pigment yellows. So like, I went to my little, this is a recipe box that I use for paint. Took out all my yellows and I compared them to these. That's what that process looked like. There we go. And in that process, I discovered, just by using my eyeballs, no science here, imidazolone, I think I'm saying that right, imidazolone lemon by Core is pretty close, y'all. Look at those. These are pretty close in color and transparency. And when I look at the way they performed here, there's a little more transparency, which I actually like, in the imidazolone lemon. And I decided that was the route I was going to go. It may not be Daniel Smith. This is a Holbein tube. But as you see here, Holbein also uses gum arabic. Excuse me. So we may not be the same brand, but we're all using the same binder. So I feel pretty confident that this might work. So I'm going to take these three colors. Let's put these two aside. And we're going to see live on camera here if I can achieve a green gold to my satisfaction. So this is what we're going to do. I have no idea what I'm doing. In fact, I just got some stuff. I'm like, hey, palette knives might work to mix. I'm going to need an empty pan when I'm done. I don't know the proportions of this. I'm assuming because of the order that they were written in here, just like on a recipe or an ingredients list on a packaged food item, the ingredient that comes first is perhaps the one that has the most, and progressively down with the quantities, but I don't know if it works that way. We'll find out. But before we do that, I think, let's see, I need to get some water. I've got my palette here, which is actually just a plate that I got at a secondhand store, but I love, because look what it does. Voila! I can store my brushes at any angle. It's super fun. Highly recommend going to secondhand stores to seek out art supplies. Let's do a little compares. I want to have this swatched out. Put some more water there. So I have something to be looking at. Just put some here too, as I try to create the color. All right, so this is Green Gold by Daniel Smith. Let's make it nice and thick. Notice it's heavy on the yellow, but it's just a beautiful, Like I see this color green in nature actually a lot. And when you mix it with other colors, you can get quickly to a shade you're looking for, either brighter or paler or darker. Just really flexible in that regard. And when you're painting quickly, I'm doing this because I want to see how it fades out, because I'm going to test this new color that I'm going to make, hopefully. Hopefully this doesn't end in total sadness where all I've done is just squirted out a bunch of paint from my tubes and ended with nothing. All right, I probably should label this that this is Literal Tube Green Gold by Daniel Smith. Oops, move over. There we go. All right, I'm just going to put a little dollop of each of the colors and begin figuring out what my proportions are, or even if mixing these three, I mean, maybe it's not like that, right? Maybe mixing the three pigments you see on a label of a paint tube, oops, of a multi-pigment. Okay, there we go. Oh, sometimes oh, this one got crusted. Sometimes it's easy. Oops, that was a mistake. And sometimes it's hard to open. I don't want this accidentally there. All right. I have no idea if I'm right. Like logically, when you're looking at a paint tube and it says it's got 3 colors in it, you figure if you can get those 3 colors, why shouldn't you be able to try to approximate, oh, I left my brush in the water, whoops, approximate that color on your own if you had those paints. So I'm gonna then, let's swatch this out too. All right, so those are our ingredients. Let's see what happens when we mix them. I think let's just try mixing the colors with the brush first before I start going full board. I feel like I'm pulling pretty much like equal amounts of paint together. I could be wrong. Phthalo green is really, really powerful. So, ooh, see, this is why you don't mix paints like this with your brush. It climbs into it climbs up the brush. So this is a nice green, but I think as we see in a second, this is not anywhere near. Oh, but it's pretty awesome, guys. Look at that green. That's a pretty beautiful green. So that's a 50, I can't say 50-50 spread because there's 3 colors, but whatever the equal amounts of color can be, when you've got 3 ingredients, this is it. That's kind of awesome. That would be useful in my kit. Let's just call this equal parts, because I don't know what 50-50-50 of, it's 150, so I can't possibly be the right kind of math. Equal parts mix is what we'll call that. If I want to get to green gold, I need to do a great deal less of phthalo green. Let's tap it. So we've got phthalo green there. I'm going to rinse my brush off this time because I really don't want to contaminate the yellow, since it's a much less powerful straw. Got a considerable dollop of imidazolone yellow. And then let's see here. I think that's probably a little less than the imidazolone. Imidazolone. I think it's just a little bit less. And let's see what happens. See, look what, we still get a really intense effect with that phthalo. Phthalo is strong. Oh, wait. sorry, I need to stop talking while I'm trying to learn and teach at the same time. I'll get back to that phthalo conversation in just a moment. This is getting close. Very close. And this also is a lovely green. I feel like I want to get more than one empty pan out and kind of mix up multiples of these three colors together. I think you'll say that this one was heavy on the PY175. This was heavy on the imidazolone lemon. And the other two heavy. I'm going to say PY175 because that's easier for me to say. PY175. Light on PG36. And medium medium on the PY150. Oops, that's not a very good Y. Okay, let's see. I think I need more of the nickel yellow azo into this mix, and I might get really close to green gold. All right, so we want a heavy dose of imidazolone lemon, a heavier dose of nickel yellow azo, and I do think we just still want, no, that's probably not quite enough of a touch. That's the touch. I think those are our proportions that might get us closer. Yeah, I still don't want to use a palette knife just yet. I might not even use a palette knife at all. Might have to go get myself a toothpick. Wow. Okay, so even before it's totally integrated, this is looking close. Man, that phthalo, it may say PG36 on the tube, but they're definitely not using a lot. I put a little water on my brush because there's more paint that I put in here. I'm trying not to get it to climb up the brush because then you can't actually integrate it into the color. So let's see, that's looking very, very close to green gold. Okay, let's test this one out. So way more, woohoo. Okay, well this is also, again, a very good green. Very natural, but is not green gold. It is approximating it better though. Look at that, far more gold coming out at the end. I don't know, can you see all of them at once? I think you can. I think I'm gonna have to get another piece of paper. Stand by for a second. So before we paint elsewhere, I just wanna finish this swatch and take note of it, because this is also a third green that I think is really awesome. Let's see here. Definitely these three colors together make some beautiful greens. This one was heavy PY 175. Heavy, I don't know if it's, I think it's heavier. PY 150. And I want to say a touch, barely, of any PG 36. As like I said, it is powerful. You'd never think that that was such a boom, Sakatumi kind of color, but it is. It doesn't take much. I'm trying to think here. This is what happens when you film everything live here. I think I need to spray some of this a little bit because it's March in Texas, but it's over 70 degrees and dry. So this is getting a little crusty. I'm going to pick up more of this nickel yellow azo and combine it with what we did before and see what we get. I know it's kind of a not as scientific of a measurement. I mean, scientific for what I'm doing here, because I've already painted with what was in this pile of paint. But I think it brings it closer to approximately the same level of yellow, imidazolone yellow and nickel yellow azo. So that's heavier. That's looking like it's getting closer. All right. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, that's pretty cool. And look at that. What do your eyes say, y'all? Am I excited? This is my excited laugh. Wow. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna swatch it further with some water. I'm gonna dilute this a little more and see what our transparencies come out as, if they're similar. I think, wow, okay. That's pretty close. I am going to zoom the camera in so you can maybe get an idea here of why I'm so excited. Remember, one is wet and one is dry. But look at these swatches. Well, I'm gonna have to zoom out a little bit. That's a little too close to get them both in. There we go. Look at that. Okay, so that's really close. So what I had here, move this over. This is, I want to say, so let's just call it heavy PY 175, which is your imidazolone yellow. That's the lighter yellow. And PY 150, which is our nickel yellow azo. And we're talking just a touch of PG 36. That, I mean, I'm happy. That's really great. Now, the thing is, could I, can I mix up enough so that I have a pan? And now I have to ask myself the question, since I've achieved this set of, here, let me move this out of the way so it's flatter. I like, I like these three greens too. This is a really cool, brilliant grass green that I can see being really fun with a whole bunch of different projects. And these two also, all right, I'll be right back. I'm gonna find a different palette, something that's flat so that I can use a palette knife. But now we're gonna fill a pan with it, with this, absolutely. But I think I might even do one with that. Just a second, stand by. Okay, I looked around the studio and I didn't find a palette that satisfied me. They all seemed like they would get in the way of scraping the paint into the pan. So I'm just using a piece of acetate that I had and with a white printer paper underneath so that I can see, because that way I feel like I will be able to scrape all the paint off once I've finished mixing it. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna follow this recipe and see if I can make it en masse. The dance of this color really is between nickel yellow azo and phthalo green. I started out by being very cautious with the phthalo green, had to eventually add some more, but then that was too much, so then I had to add some more nickel yellow azo back into the mix. The toothpick at the end was really helpful in leveling out the paint so that when I use my brush, it's going over a flat surface. I'm really happy with how the final color turned out, and I'm totally going to do this again. So I set out to create one color, Green Gold by Daniel Smith, and I feel really like I hit it. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I got the color. I'm super duper excited. This is the one I made. This is Green Gold on its own. At least I think that's the one I made. I know I started painting all the way around. I can't tell the difference anymore, which is, you know, that's my sign of success. But on top of making Green Gold, I feel like I found other greens that I wanted to make. So off camera, I went through the process again and I recreated this one right here, the lighter of the two first shades that I made as we were going through this process. I'm like, I really like this. And I went through and I compared it with all of my other greens, and I don't have a watercolor pan or tube like this. So I went through and I created it and rematched it. Excuse me. These swatches right here are my rematching. So I feel pretty confident that I hit it again. And I'm labeling it Spring Green. And I did that as well here. I always label my pans. I'm a nerd, y'all. I love detail. I labeled my pans. I let myself know that this is my mix by putting my initials to remind myself in case I forget or in case somebody's picking up, because I paint with my friends and they're like, what is that? Well, if you look and see there, it's the one I mixed. But then I also go through and I know now from this process that the order that these pigments were listed, that's the level. So this is nickel yellow azo, this is the lemon yellow, or what I used was a PY 175 imidazolone yellow, and then PG 36. These designate what is the most the highest concentration. So it's mostly PY 150, a little less of lemon yellow, PY3, and a touch of PG 36. So I kept that order on my pan the same to remind me that that's the order of ingredients. That's the baking list, if you will. And I did the same thing here. So with my spring green, what I'm calling a spring green, I put first PY 175 before PY 150 because it's heavy on the 175. It was heavy on the imidazolone yellow. It was middling on the PY 150, and it has more PG 36, more phthalo green than the Green Gold. And you can't really denote that, but your eyeball will let you know the difference between those two. So I have two new greens, and I bet, well, some of you might be wondering this. Michelle, this was a whole lot of effort. You could have just bought tubes. There's probably tube greens out there. Well, we know there's a tube green that matches Green Gold. There's probably a tube green that matches this green that I made on accident today. And it took 3 tubes to get to these. But it took 3 tubes to get to this color. But in the process of trying to recreate Green Gold, I found another green. And I still have these 3 tubes of paint that work beautifully in mixes all over the place. Whereas, yes, I could have, and maybe I will. Maybe I'll Google the prices of similar colors and put them on the screen somewhere for you to see. I could have bought this tube for less, without a doubt. A single tube of paint costs less than 3 tubes of paint. But these 3 tubes can then be their single pigment colors, because as we saw over here, these are 3, oopsies, they're going to fall over. These are 3 gorgeous colors on their own. But I've managed to make half pans of 2 different colors using these 3 colors, and I still have a lot of paint in each of these tubes. And these are tubes that I've already been using quite a lot. So it doesn't look like it, but watercolor goes really far. So I feel like personally, the heavier investment on the front, because these will be more expensive than one mixed up tube of paint, that's not a single pigment paint. These will be more expensive, but the ability to create on into the future is definitely here with 3 versus buying the green. And because this is watercolor, I'm like gonna still paint with this paint that's left here, this paint that's left here, this paint that's left here, this paint that's left here. Watercolor is super duper flexible. Thank you for joining me today on my pursuit of making green gold versus buying green gold. It's only 3 months into my self goal of using up my art supplies before buying more art supplies. So it's early days, but this experiment today, which I'm really glad that I did live and on camera, it was fun. I felt like it may lead to some conversation with folks, at least I hope so. And I got not only 1, but 2 greens. I feel like if I had done this off camera, I probably would have focused on heading straight towards that target. And I'm really excited by these color experiments and color recipes. I may have to start creating a color recipe book for mixing paint from tubes. So thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, if you found something interesting, if you got a nugget that you're going to take back to your own studio, please do like, share, and subscribe. Everything. I know it seems ridiculous, but every time you engage my channel, any of the YouTubers that you enjoy, anytime you engage our channels, it does a huge service to our channel. And we appreciate every like, comment, and share. I really love the comments that start a nerdy art conversation because, as a studio artist, you don't get to have a lot of those. So I appreciate it when folks engage me on my comments. It is me answering those comments. It is not an AI bot. You are talking to me. So if you have questions about what we did today, if you have questions about anything that popped up, if you'd like me to follow through on something a little bit differently, please, the comments is the best place to let me know about that. And if you know of somebody that might enjoy this content, please share either my channel or this video with them. Again, does my channel a huge service. So I hope you had a good time because I am super excited about these greens. And you know what? Have a wonderful and creative day. And I will see you next month in the next video.